I returned to being 20. My girlfriend, in front of the whole class, accepted my good buddy's confession. He put his arm around my girlfriend, mocking me as a poor jerk unworthy of love. Everyone was waiting to see me make a fool of myself. But they didn't know I returned from hell bearing 20 years' worth of memories. This time, I will take back everything I once lost with interest. I will make everyone who betrayed me and humiliated me kneel at my feet, look up at me, and repent. Ethan, let's break up. The cold voice felt like a steel needle piercing my eardrum. I snapped my eyes open. The blinding, incandescent light left me dazed. Before me was a classroom scene both familiar and strange. Classmates filled the seats around me, and the professor at the podium was still babbling on. Standing in front of me was the girlfriend I had loved for 3 years, Sophia. At this moment, there wasn't a trace of her former gentleness on her face, only bone-deep coldness and disgust. Am I not dead? Pushed off the rooftop 30 stories high by my best friend Liam. In my dying moments, Liam's snarling face was still vividly before my eyes. Ethan, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too naive. Your business plans, your billions in assets, and Sophia, they're all mine now. Ha ha ha. Wind howled in my ears, and a feeling of weightlessness swallowed me. But now, I had actually returned to 20 years old, back in a junior year classroom. Ethan, what are you daydreaming about? Sophia is talking to you, a grating voice snapped. It was Liam. He was standing beside Sophia, one arm already eagerly wrapped around her waist, his face betraying unabashed smugness and provocation. In my previous life, it was here that they staged their joint performance of a peaceful breakup with seamless transition, and I became the laughingstock of the entire school. I stared at the pair of lovers before me, the overwhelming hatred almost bursting out of my chest. Blood rushed to my head as if about to explode. My organs felt doused in ice water. My fingernails dug deep into my palms until a sting spread. I suppressed the murderous intent in my heart, and instead a cold curve lifted the corner of my mouth. All right, I calmly uttered 2 words. Sophia and Liam were both stunned. They expected me to be angry, to question them, to wag my tail and beg like a dog. Only they didn't expect me to be so calm. Sophia frowned, a flash of displeasure crossing her face. Ethan, what do you mean? Aren't you at all upset? I laughed, smiling brilliantly. Why be upset? Dumping a gold-digging freeloader on a bus, I should be celebrating. Liam, congratulations, you've successfully taken over. You. Sophia's face turned beet red in an instant, her whole body trembling with anger. Ethan, what the hell did you say? Liam exploded in anger, pointing at my nose and shouting, Who do you think you are? A pauper. You deserve Sophia. Only I can give her the life she wants. The whole class turned their attention to us, eyes full of ridicule and the thrill of watching a show. I slowly stood up. I was half a head taller than Liam, looking down on him from above. Who am I? I laughed softly, reached out, and lightly patted the hand he had wrapped around Sophia's waist. You'll find out soon enough. Remember, starting today, everything you have, I will take back with my own hands. And the trash I don't want, I'll give to you. After saying that, I didn't look at them again. Under the stunned gazes of the entire class, I walked straight out of the classroom. Behind me came Liam's furious roar and Sophia's aggrieved sobs. But I no longer care. Outside the academic building, I looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. The air was thick with the scent of youth, but I was no longer that naive boy. I crawled back from hell as a vengeful spirit. All that remains in my heart is revenge. Liam, Sophia, and all who betrayed me and trampled my dignity in my past life. Are you ready? This game is ruled by me. I didn't go back to the dormitory. I went straight to a bank off campus. I only had a few hundred yuan of living money in my pocket. This was the first hurdle on my path of revenge. But to me, that was no problem at all, because in my head, I carried the trajectory of the global economy for the next 20 years, remembering every single speculative stock about to skyrocket. Sir, What service would you like to handle? The bank's lobby manager looked at my cheap student clothes, a faint, barely noticeable condescension in her eyes. Open an account. Get the highest level VIP black card. I said calmly. The lobby manager was taken aback for a moment, then looked at me as if I were an idiot. Sir, our bank's black card requires at least 10 million US dollars of liquid funds in the account to qualify. The mockery in her tone was unmistakable. I ignored her and walked straight to an unmanned counter, took out my phone, and dialed a number I had noted in a previous life. The phone rang 3 times and was answered. Hello. A steady middle-aged male voice came through. Is this John Smith, Mr. Smith? There was a pause on the other end, and he asked warily, Who are you? How did you get my private number? I chuckled softly, Mr. Smith. Not only do I know your number, I also know you're currently in a desperate scramble for financing for your company's subsidiary, Vision Tech. If you don't pull in another $5 million in investment within 3 days, your company will face bankruptcy and liquidation. Why you? Who are you? John Smith's voice was full of shock and horror. This matter is top company secret. Apart from a few core executives, no outsider could possibly know. Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is that I can save you. I paused, then spoke word by word. 1 hour from now, the abandoned factory south of the city. I'll give you 5 million US dollars. But in exchange, 51% of Vision Tech's shares must belong to me. After speaking, I hung up the phone immediately. I knew he would come, because in my previous life, Vision Tech collapsed due to a $5 million break in its funding chain, and later a major corporation acquired its core technology. A technology that 3 years later was worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And now, I only need $5 million to bring this future $100 billion behemoth into my possession. But the problem was, where will my $5 million come from? I turned my gaze to the stock trading screen in the bank's main hall. On it, a stock called BrightMed Medical was currently lying half dead at its daily limit down. Everyone thought it was a junk stock and stayed far away from it. But I knew that at 2 p.m. this afternoon, the state would announce a major healthcare reform policy, and BrightMed Medical, as the primary beneficiary of the policy, would post 30 consecutive limit-up days over the next month. I walked up to the counter and invested the only $500 I had for living expenses, and I used 50 times leverage. The teller looked at me as if I were a madman. Young man, I'm just warning you. Using such high leverage, if you get liquidated, you'll end up owing the bank a huge sum. No matter. I signed my name and turned to leave. 1 hour later, at the abandoned factory south of the city, a black Audi A6 pulled up in front of me, right on time. The car door opened, and a middle-aged man in a suit, with a gentlemanly face but a haggard expression, got out. It was John Smith. He looked at me warily. Are you the one who called me? Where are my $5 million? I said nothing, only handed him my phone. On it was my stock account. The string of zeros in the account balance column was almost blinding. 25 million US dollars. Just moments ago, at exactly 2 in the afternoon, the positive news came out and BrightMed surged from limit down to limit up. With 500 US dollars, I had leveraged $25 million. John Smith's pupils contracted sharply, and his breathing grew rapid. He stared at me fiercely, as if looking at a monster. You, what exactly are you? Your savior. I put my phone away and said calmly, now we can talk about that 51% stake. John Smith is a smart man. When he saw the miraculous balance in my account, he understood that I was by no means an ordinary college student. He didn't hesitate much and signed the equity transfer agreement on the spot. I transferred 5 million US dollars into his company's account, Vision Tech. This future trillion-yuan tech giant officially changed hands. Mr. Johnson, next week. John Smith's demeanor had become extremely deferential. You continue to run things as usual. I won't interfere with the company's day-to-day affairs. I cut him off. Remember, from today on, your boss's surname is Johnson. Having taken care of everything, I hailed a cab back to campus. Just as I reached the dormitory building, I saw Liam and a few lackeys blocking the way. Ethan, you worthless coward. You finally dare come back." As soon as Liam saw me, he lunged at me like a mad dog. The few people behind him were also rubbing their fists, faces full of ill intent. Obviously, being publicly humiliated by me in class this afternoon made him feel embarrassed. He came looking for a fight. "What? Want a fight?" I looked at him coldly. "So what if I beat you? Today I'm going to make you know what happens when you offend me," Liam said, throwing a punch at my face. In my past life, I was cowardly and easily bullied. In situations like this, I would only curl up and take the beating. But now, what boils within me is the flame of vengeance. My gaze went cold. Instead of retreating, I advanced, sidestepping his punch while delivering a swift elbow strike that smashed hard into his ribs. Crack! A crisp cracking of bone rang out. Liam let out a piercing scream, his whole body folding like a boiled shrimp as he collapsed to the ground, cold sweat instantly soaking his forehead. His henchmen were all dumbfounded. They hadn't expected that Ethan, who usually seemed weak and easy to bully, would be so ruthless. "What are you standing there for? Get him! Kill him!" Liam clutched his ribs, his face contorted as he hissed. They exchanged glances, mustered their courage, and closed in on me. A cruel curve lifted at the corner of my mouth. Fortunately, the anger I'd accumulated in my past life still had nowhere to be vented. I pounced like a tiger crashing into a flock of sheep. Punching, kicking, elbowing, kneeing. Each strike was precise and brutal, aimed straight at the vulnerable parts of the human body. In less than a minute, all of Liam's henchmen were lying on the ground, wailing in pain. The entire dormitory building fell into dead silence. Everyone watching looked at me as if I were a monster. They couldn't believe this was the same easygoing Ethan who was always bullied. I walked over to Liam, who was sprawled on the ground like a dead dog, crouched down, and patted his face twisted by pain. "I told you, you'll soon find out what kind of person I am. Now, do you know?" Liam looked at me in horror, his eyes full of fear and disbelief. He couldn't understand how, in just half a day, this trash he'd always looked down on could become so terrifying. "Ethan, but don't be reckless, my dad is on the school board," he said in a trembling voice, invoking his backing. "On the school board?" I smiled. "Soon, I will make it so he can no longer be on that board." When I finished speaking, I stood up, took a wet wipe from my pocket, carefully wiped my hands, then tossed it into Liam's face like trash. "Remember, this is only the beginning." I turned and walked away, leaving behind a scene of chaos and countless shocked faces. The fact that I beat up Liam spread across the campus like a gust of wind. Everyone talked about me, speculating what had happened to provoke me and why my temperament had changed so drastically. I couldn't care less. I returned to the dormitory, and the three roommates looked at me with a mixture of awe and a slight distance. I was too lazy to explain. I packed my things and told them I was moving out. In the most upscale neighborhood near the school, Royal Gardens, I paid cash for a top-floor, spacious flat. Standing before the huge floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the city's night view below, I felt not the slightest ripple in my heart. This achievement is but a drop in the ocean compared to the business empire I had in my previous life. The road of revenge has only just begun. The next day, an unexpected person came to find me. It was Sophia. She stood at the door of my new dorm, looking at the luxuriously decorated living room, her face full of shock. "Ethan, where did you get so much money?" she stammered. She wore a white dress, had delicate light makeup on, and still looked that pure and charming way. But to me, she seemed utterly hypocritical and disgusting. "None of your damn business?" I leaned against the doorframe and looked at her coldly. Sophia's face went pale, her eyes instantly reddening as she said, wrongly, "Ethan, how can you talk to me like that? I know you're still angry about what happened yesterday, but Liam and I—" "Stop!" I cut her off outright. "I have no interest in your mess with that dog. If you have something to say, say it. If not, get out and don't dirty my floor." "You—" Sophia trembled all over from my rough attitude, but she held herself back. She took a deep breath, as if making a decision, and looked at me pitifully. "Ethan, I know I was wrong. Liam and I are not what you think. Weary has been harassing me. I was just confused yesterday. Let's get back together, okay? Looking at that calculating face of hers, I felt a wave of nausea. In my previous life, she did the same thing. After my company had achieved some success, she came back trying to reconcile with me. Soft-hearted, I chose to forgive, and as a result, I buried the deepest seeds for Liam's betrayal. In this life, I will never make the same mistake again. Make up. I sounded as if I'd heard the biggest joke. Sophia, do you think all men are as despicable as you? Sophia's face instantly went completely pale. Get out. I spat one word, my gaze cold as a blade. Disappear immediately before I change my mind and throw you out of here. Sophia trembled all over at the murderous intent in my eyes. She didn't dare say another word and stumbled away, turning and running. Watching her embarrassed back, I felt not a shred of pleasure, only endless coldness. Sophia was merely a little appetizer on my road to revenge. The real feast is Liam and the huge family behind him. I took out my phone and called John Smith. Mr. Smith, help me look up our school's board member Richard Brown and information on all the companies under his name. The more detailed, the better. Also, in the name of Vision Tech, acquire every patent on the market related to virtual reality technology, regardless of cost. John Smith on the other end of the line sounded puzzled, but still replied respectfully, "Yes, Mr. Johnson." I hung up the phone, stared out into the night, and a cold smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Liam, aren't you relying on your dad being on the school board? Then I'll start with your dad first, let you taste what it's like to fall from the clouds to the bottom of the valley. Liam's retaliation came faster than I had imagined. Early the next morning, I received a call from the counselor asking me to come to the Academic Affairs office. In the Academic Affairs office, a middle-aged man with a receding hairline and a big belly sat in the main chair. He was the director of Academic Affairs, Michael Davis, and also a loyal henchman of Liam's father, Richard Brown. Liam and his father, Richard Brown, sat nearby on the sofa, both wearing triumphant expressions. Liam still had a cast on his ribs. When he saw me come in, his eyes were full of malice and schadenfreude. "Ethan, you still dare to show up?" Michael Davis slammed his hand on the table and barked with full authority, openly assaulting a fellow student on campus and causing serious injury. A troublemaker like you will not be tolerated at our school. Trustee Brown, how do you think we should handle this? He looked obsequiously at Richard Brown. Richard Brown leisurely sipped his tea, cast a sidelong glance at me, and said indifferently, "A student with such corrupt character is a danger to keep around. Expel him immediately." With those words, my death sentence was pronounced. The smile on Liam's face grew even brighter. He seemed to already see me expelled from school, rolling out like a miserable stray dog. "Expel me?" I laughed a laugh full of scorn. I pulled out a chair and sat down by myself, crossing one leg over the other. "Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, on what grounds do you dismiss me?" Michael Davis snapped. "On the grounds that you assaulted a classmate. There are both eyewitnesses and physical evidence." "Oh, the evidence?" I asked with amusement. "Liam's injury assessment is the evidence, and so many classmates saw it. Did any of them see that Liam started it and that he brought people to corner me?" I retorted. Michael Davis was momentarily at a loss for words. Richard Brown snorted coldly. "Special pleading. No matter who started it. The fact remains that you seriously injured someone. There's no room for negotiation. You must be fired." His tone left no room for doubt. "Is that so?" I took a voice recorder out of my pocket, set it on the table, and pressed play. From inside, the conversation between Liam and his father from yesterday at the academic office door came through clearly. "Dad, you have to get revenge for me. Expel that piece of trash, Ethan." "Don't worry, I've already made arrangements with Michael Davis. A powerless, poor student. Isn't he exactly the kind of person we can manipulate however we want? Tomorrow, I'll make sure he packs up and gets out." The recording finished playing, and the entire office fell into a deathly silence. Michael Davis's face went instantly ashen, cold sweat trickling down. Richard Brown's complexion also turned sullen. He stared at me fixedly, his gaze as if it could devour someone. You, how dare you record this? There's no choice. With people like you, you've always got to keep a card up your sleeve. I shrugged and said slowly, Mr. Brown, tell me, what do you think would happen if I handed this recording over to the media or the education authorities? You wouldn't dare. Richard Brown suddenly stood up and barked, loud but trembling. Watch me. I pocketed the voice recorder, stood up, and walked over to him. Now, let's talk again about firing me. I stared into his eyes and said, word by word, or let's talk about how much longer you, this school board director, can stay in your position. Richard Brown's face went pale and flushed in turns, his chest heaving violently. He had been a dominant figure in the business world for years, and had never been cornered by some green kid like this. What exactly do you want? He forced out between his teeth. Simple. I held up 3 fingers. First, in front of the whole school, students and faculty, publicly apologize to me and restore my good name. Second, you, Richard Brown, resign from the school board immediately. Third, I paused, my gaze turning to Liam, who looked stupefied. Make him kneel and kowtow to me 3 times. You're dreaming. Liam shrieked like a cat with its tail stepped on. You want me to kneel to you? Who do you think you are? Richard Brown's face darkened to an extreme. Young man, don't get carried away. Leave some room to retreat. It's better for future meetings. Leave some room. I laughed a bitter, mocking laugh. When you were trying to ruin me back then, why didn't you think of leaving any room? I'll give you 10 minutes to decide. After 10 minutes, if I don't get a satisfactory answer, this recording will be all over the top headlines online. After speaking, I leisurely sat back in my chair and began looking at my phone as if discussing a trivial matter. Time passed, minute by minute, second by second. The atmosphere in the office was crushed to the extreme. Michael Davis was already scared out of his wits, slumped in his chair and too frightened to speak. Cold sweat covered Richard Brown's forehead as he continuously weighed the pros and cons. Once the recording is exposed, not only will he be unable to keep his position on the board, but his company's reputation will also suffer a devastating blow. By comparison, a hollow title and his son's kneecap suddenly don't seem so unbearable. Finally, a minute before time ran out, Richard Brown seemed to have all his strength drained and slumped listlessly onto the sofa. All right, I agree. His voice was hoarse and weak. Dad! Liam looked at him in disbelief. Shut up! Richard Brown shouted with all his might, eyes bloodshot. Do you want to drag the whole family down with you? Liam immediately wilted. He glared at me with venom, his eyes full of unwillingness and humiliation. Kneel! I said coolly, as if commanding a dog. Liam's body shook violently, his fists clenched so tight his nails nearly cut into his skin, making him kowtow to the bastard he's always looked down on hurt more than killing him. Hurry up, Richard Brown hissed. Under the dual pressure of his father and his future, Liam finally gave in. His legs went weak, and with a thud he dropped to his knees before me. That handsome face was twisted and distorted by humiliation. Bang! 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 3 loud kowtows echoed through the silent office. Around me were the sharp inhalations of Michael Davis and the heavy breaths of Richard Brown. I looked down at Liam kneeling on the ground without a trace of emotion. This little humiliation, what is it compared to the suffering I endured in my past life? This is only the beginning. Remember this feeling. I stepped in front of him, bent down, and said in a voice only the 2 of us could hear. Because in the future, you will kneel countless times. Richard Brown and his son publicly apologized, and the matter of Liam kneeling before me once again stirred up a huge commotion at school. I became a legendary figure at the school whom no one dared provoke. And Richard Brown, keeping his promise, announced the next day that he was resigning from the Board of Trustees for health reasons. With that, the Brown family's backer at the school was completely toppled. But I knew this was far from enough. What I wanted was for them to be damned forever. The virtual reality patent I had John Smith acquire has already begun to show results. And in my previous life, I remember that Richard Brown's core business was a company called Skyrise Echon. Next month, this company will spend a huge sum to win a prime plot, but due to subsequent policy changes, the project will be abandoned, the funding chain will break, and it will ultimately go into bankruptcy liquidation. What I have to do is pour another bucket of oil on that fire. On the weekend, a business cocktail party hosted by Riverside City's high society was held at the Grand Hyatt. Everyone who could attend this event was a wealthy celebrity with assets exceeding $100 million. I was also among those invited. The invitation was delivered by John Smith. When I walked into the resplendent banquet hall, wearing a custom-made high-end suit, I immediately drew quite a few people's attention. They were all guessing which family's son this handsome but utterly unfamiliar young man might be. I ignored those probing looks and went straight to the buffet area, picked up a glass of champagne, and leisurely sipped it. Soon, a familiar figure appeared in my sight. Richard Brown. He was holding a wine glass, smiling broadly as he chatted with several real estate tycoons, seeming to have come out of the shadow of the past few days. Beside him stood a figure dressed flamboyantly. It was Sophia. She was like a proud peacock at this moment, closely linking arms with Liam, enjoying the looks of envy or jealousy from the people around them. It seemed that after being rebuffed by me, she had returned to Liam's embrace. Or rather, what she was after was the Brown family's wealth behind Liam. Truly pathetic and laughable. They noticed me soon after. Liam's face instantly turned extremely unpleasant, the malice in his eyes almost taking on a tangible form. Sophia's expression was more complicated, surprised, embarrassed, with a faint, hard-to-detect trace of jealousy. She couldn't understand why the poor guy she had dumped could appear at a gathering of this caliber. Richard Brown's face also darkened when he saw me, but he quickly put on a smile and walked over holding a glass. "Mr. Johnson, what a coincidence you're here too," he said with a smile, as if the previous grievances had never happened. "No wonder he's an old fox. Deep and calculating. Mr. Brown, hope you've been well." I also smiled and raised my glass. "Young man, you have potential," Richard Brown said meaningfully, but sometimes when one's edge shows too much, it's easy to be cut down. "This is a warning directed at me." I smiled. "Thanks for your concern, Mr. Brown. But I'm tough. Most people can't get rid of me." Richard Brown's smile froze for a moment. Just then, Sophia came over arm in arm with Liam. "Ethan, what are you doing here? Is this the kind of place you should be?" Sophia said in a reproachful tone, a trace of superiority between her brows. She seemed to be trying to use this approach to cover up the insecurity and jealousy inside her. Before I could speak, Liam sneered in a sarcastic tone. "Sophia, don't say that. Ethan's a big shot now. Maybe he snuck in here as a waiter." The few rich kids beside him immediately burst into laughter. "Waiter? The waiters here all have much more poise than you." I glanced at him coolly. "You?" Liam's face flushed with anger. I couldn't be bothered with this band of clowns any longer, and turned my gaze to Richard Brown, saying casually as if by accident, "Mr. Brown, I heard you're bidding on the land in the east of the city?" Richard Brown's eyes flickered as he looked at me warily. "Mr. Johnson is interested in real estate as well." "No, I just feel like that piece of land is a little eerie." I shook my head and put on a solemn tone. "I advise Mr. Brown, you'd better not touch it." "Ha ha!" Liam laughed as if he'd heard the funniest thing. "Ethan, you don't know Jack. My dad hired the country's top team to evaluate it. That land will be worth hundreds of billions of dollars in the future. You, a pauper, what do you know about business valuation?" "Exactly. Stop spreading nonsense here. Get out of here. Don't distract us from serious business." The other rich second-generation kids around also chimed in. Richard Brown also shook his head with a smile, clearly not taking my words to heart. To him, I was just a green kid who had gotten lucky, made a bit of money, and didn't know my place. Watching them act with such fearless arrogance, I sneered inwardly. Stupid people never listen to advice. Since you insist on jumping into this pit of fire, Don't blame me for adding another pile of wood beneath you. The climax of the party was a charity auction. The auction items range from antique calligraphy and paintings to jewelry and ornaments. Everything you could expect. Liam, eager to show off in front of Sophia and everyone else, kept raising his paddle and bought several flashy but useless items, making Sophia giggle repeatedly while the people around them praised him. I watched the whole time with a cold eye until the last lot was brought up. It was a plain-looking gray stone, said to have been found in some ancient ruin, with a starting bid of $100,000. Everyone was unenthusiastic, thinking it was nothing but a lump of rock. But when I saw it, my breath suddenly caught. Meteorite iron. In my previous life, it was this piece of meteorite iron that was purchased by a top international scientist who extracted from it a groundbreaking superconducting material that sparked a global technological revolution. And that scientist consequently won the Nobel Prize. The value of this rock was estimated to be immeasurable. This time it has to be mine. $100,000 once, $100,000 twice. Any further bids? If not, $1 million. I raised the bidding paddle. The whole room fell silent instantly. Everyone was staring at me as if I were an idiot. Spend $1 million to buy a worthless rock. Is this person crazy? Liam even laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. Ethan, are you burning money? $1 million for a lousy rock. Did a donkey kick your brain? Sophia looked at me with the same look she gives idiots, a disdainful sneer at the corner of her mouth. I ignored them and simply watched the auctioneer calmly. $1 million from this gentleman. Any higher bids? The auctioneer was a bit excited too. He hadn't expected this filler stone to fetch that price. $1,100,000. Liam suddenly raised his paddle. He wasn't interested in the stone. He purely wanted to annoy me, to make me spend more money for nothing. $5 million. I raised my paddle again without hesitation. The whole room erupted in astonishment. Everyone was shocked by my lavish bid. $5 million. For just a piece of old stone? Liam's expression changed too. He hadn't expected me to be so stubborn. He gritted his teeth and raised his paddle again. $6 million. He was sure I was bluffing and wanted to force me out. $10 million. I reported the new price calmly. Liam's face went completely green. Although he was a rich second generation, the pocket money he could access was only a few $1 million. $10 million was already beyond his ability. He looked toward his father, Richard Brown, as if pleading for help. Richard Brown frowned and shook his head at him. To him, spending $10 million to buy a piece of worthless rock was utterly insane. $10 million once. $10 million twice. $10 million 3 times. Sold. The auctioneer brought the hammer down. I successfully bid for that piece of meteoric iron. Amidst the crowd's mockery, incomprehension, and pitying looks, I stepped onto the stage, swiped my card, and took the stone. Spendthrift. Stupid and rich. Wait and cry. The surrounding murmurs reached my ears clearly. I didn't care at all, grabbed the stone, and prepared to leave. When I passed by Liam, he stopped me and ground his teeth, saying, "Ethan, don't get cocky. It's just a lousy rock. Let's see what tricks you can pull with it." I stopped, looked at him, and suddenly laughed. "Liam, how about we make a bet?" "Bet on what?" "Let's bet on this rock. If it's worthless, I'll pay you $100 million. If it's priceless, you... Give me your life." My voice wasn't loud, but struck like a thunderclap, exploding in Liam and Sophia's ears. Liam was so frightened by the chill in my eyes that he took a step back and barked in a bluster of bravado, "Mad woman, you're a lunatic." I ignored him and turned to leave. Watching my retreating back, Sophia's expression was unbearably complicated. She suddenly had the feeling that she seemed to have missed something incredibly important. And this sense of missing it might be a regret she could never make up for in her lifetime. I took the meteorite iron and went straight to John Smith's company. The laboratory at Vision Tech was brightly lit. John Smith and a group of graying researchers were gathered around the broken stone I had brought back, their faces full of perplexity. "Mr. Johnson, Is this the treasure you spent $10 million to buy back? John Smith asked cautiously. He really couldn't see what was special about this pitch-black stone. That's right. I nodded. Find a way to cut it open. A few researchers immediately got to work and used the company's most advanced laser cutter. However, a shocking scene unfolded. The laser beam, capable of slicing through diamond, struck the meteoritic iron and didn't leave a single mark. How is this possible? What material is this? The density is unbelievably high. All the researchers were stunned. John Smith also drew a sharp breath. He finally understood why I would spend $10 million to buy it. The sheer hardness alone was enough to prove its extraordinariness. Increase the power, I ordered in a deep voice. The laser cutter's power was turned to maximum, emitting a piercing hum. Under the continuous high-intensity cutting, a faint crack finally appeared on the surface of the meteorite iron. Immediately, a dazzling blue light burst from the fissure, bathing the entire laboratory in a dreamlike sea of blue. Everyone was rendered speechless by this strange sight. The crack widened, and, with a final crack, the meteorite iron split open from the middle. At its core lay a fist-sized blue crystal with the appearance of liquid metal. It seemed almost alive, emitting a soft, mysterious glow, and the surrounding air temperature dropped several degrees because of it. My God, what is this? An old professor's hand trembled as he wanted to touch it, but dared not. Superconductor. I uttered the 3 words, my voice carrying a faint, barely perceptible excitement. A room temperature superconductor. What? The entire laboratory erupted instantly. A room temperature superconductor. This is the ultimate problem that has plagued the global physics community for nearly a century. If achieved, it would mean humanity entering a brand new energy era. Electricity transmission would have 0 loss. Magnetic levitation technology would become widespread, and controlled nuclear fusion would no longer be a dream. This will be a technological revolution capable of changing the world. And now, this miracle, powerful enough to overturn human civilization, lay quietly before them. John Smith's breath nearly stopped. He looked at me, his eyes full of fanaticism and worship. He finally understood what kind of being he had been following. This is not a human, it's a god. Seal off the information immediately. I ordered calmly. From now on, the laboratory is classified top secret. No one may enter or leave. Study of this material is to proceed at all costs. Yes, Mr. Johnson. John Smith snapped to attention and saluted, his voice trembling with excitement. I looked at the blue crystal, a slow smile curling at the corner of my mouth. The Brown family? Skyrise Real Estate? In the face of absolute technological power, these will all be crushed. Richard Brown, your doomsday has come. Over the next few days, I threw myself wholeheartedly into research on superconducting materials. Relying on memories from my previous life, I pointed the team toward the correct research direction, greatly shortening the R&D process. Outside, Richard Brown's Skyrise Properties, just as I had predicted, successfully purchased the City East parcel of land at an astronomical price, enjoying unlimited glory. Richard Brown and his son became the center of attention in Riverside City's business circles, with countless people praising their boldness and foresight. Liam became even more carried away, boasting to everyone at school about his family's soon-to-rise commercial empire, never forgetting to mock me, saying the useless rock I bought for $10 million was probably propping up a table leg by now. I just smiled and let it go. Enjoy your triumph for a few more days. Soon, you won't even be able to cry. A week later, John Smith burst into my office in excitement. Mr. Johnson, it worked. We succeeded. He was holding a report, trembling all over from excitement. We've successfully decoded some properties of the superconductor and produced the first-generation sample. Its performance is at least 100 times stronger than the most advanced superconductors in the world right now. Good. I nodded, with little surprise on my face. Mr. Johnson, shall we announce this achievement now? Once it's released, Vision Tech will shock the world. John Smith said excitedly. No, it's not the right time yet. I shook my head. If we announce it now, we'll only become the target of everyone, picked apart by those international tech giants. What we need to do is use it to first earn enough capital and leverage for ourselves. I slid a proposal I had prepared long ago across to him. These are several product application proposals I developed, including the maglev train, a lossless power grid, and a quantum computer. Immediately organize a team to realize these plans and file patents. John Smith looked at the forward-thinking concepts in the proposal and was once again convinced by my foresight. I understand, Mr. Johnson. Also, I paused, a cold glint flashing in my eyes. It's time to give Skyrise Real Estate a big gift. I dialed number. On the other end of the line was the editor-in-chief of a financial media outlet I had befriended in advance through memories from my past life. Hello, Editor Williams. I have a big scoop here about Skyrise Properties and the East City Land King project. Are you interested? The next day, a report titled Shocking. 100 billion Land King project may have major geological hazards. Skyrise Properties could face bankruptcy crisis, exploded across the entire internet. The report detailed that there is a massive subsidence zone beneath the East City Land King, making it completely unsuitable for large-scale commercial development, and attached detailed geological survey data as evidence. These data, of course, were what I had predicted. One stone sent ripples across 1,000 waves. Skyrise Real Estate's stock price was immediately hit with a trading halt at the day's limit. Numerous partners demanded to withdraw their investments, and banks began to call in loans. Richard Brown was frantically overwhelmed, running around to dispel the rumors. But that exhaustive, irrefutable geological report pressed down on him like a mountain, leaving him gasping for air. He couldn't understand how that top-secret report, which even he hadn't yet obtained, could have been leaked. In just 3 days, Skyrise Properties saw nearly $10 billion evaporate from its market value, teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Richard Brown turned white-haired overnight. As for me, at that time I held the first product launch in the name of Vision Tech. The theme of the launch had only 2 words: the future. Vision Tech's press conference was held at the Riverside City International Convention and Exhibition Center. In attendance, besides major media, were representatives from global tech giants and investment institutions. Most of them came simply to watch the spectacle. A little-known company daring to claim it will define the future. This is an enormous joke. Liam and Sophia had also come. They were mixed in with the crowd to watch me be ridiculed. The Brown family was in a state of utter chaos, and Liam poured all his resentment onto me. He thought I was the one scheming behind the scenes, putting on airs and tricks. I'll see what kind of stunt you can pull off today. Liam glared at the stage with venom. Sophia remained silent, her eyes complex as she watched the man who was about to become the center of attention. The press conference began. I walked onto the stage wearing a simple casual outfit. No fancy pepetese, no rousing speeches. I simply stood calmly in the center of the stage and snapped my fingers. In an instant, the lights in the entire venue dimmed. To everyone's astonished gaze, a 3-meter diameter metal disc slowly rose from beneath the stage and hung silently in midair. No ropes, no scaffolding, just suspended in midair as if out of thin air. The whole room fell deathly silent. Everyone widened their eyes, mouths open wide enough to fit an egg. What is this? A holographic projection? No, it's real. Look at its metallic sheen. The reporters went mad, pressing their shutters. The flashbulbs lit the whole venue as bright as day. Ladies and gentlemen, I picked up the microphone and said with a smile, "Welcome to the future. What you see before you is Vision Tech's first product, the magnetic levitation platform. It is based on our proprietary room temperature superconducting technology and can achieve free levitation, defying gravity." Boom! My words exploded through the crowd like a heavy bomb. Room temperature superconducting technology. The holy grail that has baffled the physics community for a century has actually been conquered by this small company? Everyone went crazy. The representatives from the international tech giants were even more excited, standing up from their seats and staring fixedly at me on the stage, their eyes full of greed and frenzy. Liam and Sophia, on the other hand, were completely stunned on the spot. Their minds were blank. They couldn't make sense of any of what was happening before them. Maglev? Superconducting technology? What did this pauper they had always looked down on actually do? This can't be. It must be magic. It's a trick, Liam muttered in a daze. But the next scene completely shattered his illusion. I waved at the hovering platform. It quietly flew to my feet like an obedient pet. I stepped onto the platform, and it carried me, slowly circling above the hall. I felt like a deity descended to the mortal world, looking down at the beings below. Looking down at those shocked, frenzied, incredulous faces. Also looking down at that face twisted by fear and despair. Liam's face. This is only the beginning. My voice, through the microphone, echoed into every corner of the venue. Next, Vision Tech Technology will redefine this world. After the press conference, the name Vision Tech Technology resonated around the globe. Our website was overwhelmed. The company's phones were flooded, and countless orders and partnership offers came pouring in like snowflakes. The company's market value multiplied 100-fold within a single day. I became the hottest tech tycoon in the world. In stark contrast stood the declining Brown family. Skyrise Properties stock plummeted and ultimately insolvent. It declared bankruptcy and liquidation. Richard Brown overnight went from a billionaire worth tens of billions to a heavily indebted pauper. He couldn't take the blow, suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage, and was paralyzed in bed. The Brown family was finished. Liam came to see me. He knelt under my company building, crying and begging me to spare his family. He no longer had his former arrogance and malice. Only humility and fear remained. I merely glanced at him coldly through the floor-to-ceiling window, then drew the curtains. Let you go. When you pushed me off the rooftop in our past life, did you ever think about sparing me? I'm not a saint. I am merely an avenger returned from hell. Sophia also came looking for me. She dressed in pitiable finery, crying with tear-streaked cheeks, pouring out her regrets and begging to return to my side. She said she had been blinded by lard back then, and that only now did she realize who had truly treated her well. I looked at her hypocritical face and could only laugh. Sophia, do you know what you look like right now? Like a cat that smells blood. You thought I was poor back then and ran off with Liam. Now the Brown family has fallen, and you want to come back to me? Do you think I'm a kind of person who would pick up trash? My words were like knives, stripping away the last of her dignity until nothing was left intact. Her face went ashen, and she staggered away. I knew that for the rest of her life, she would live in regret and resentment. And this was the best punishment for her. Having resolved those grudges from my past life, I devoted all my energy to the development of Vision Tech. Under my leadership, the company successively launched a series of disruptive products, such as quantum computers and controllable fusion reactors. Human civilization's progress was pushed forward by at least a century because of me. I became the godfather of this era, hailed as the man who changed the world with technology. My wealth could no longer be measured by numbers. My name was etched onto the monument of history. 10 years later, I stood at the pinnacle of the world, looking down at the world beneath my feet that I had changed. Maglev cars replaced traditional fuel vehicles, weaving through the city's skies. Clean, efficient fusion energy has made the phrase energy crisis a thing of the past. Human footsteps have even begun to reach for the stars and the sea. And I, as the creator of it all, felt an unprecedented loneliness. My great revenge avenged, my dream fulfilled. My life, it seemed, had lost its purpose. That day, I returned alone to the university I had graduated from many years ago. Walking along the familiar tree-lined path, watching one lively young face after another, I felt somewhat dazed. It feels as if those years, full of love, hatred, and vengeance, were just yesterday. I walked to the classroom that changed my fate. Inside, a young professor was telling the students my story. Mr. Ethan Johnson is the greatest alumnus in our school's history. Through his legendary life, he teaches us, never look down on a struggling youth. As long as you hold a dream and fight for it tirelessly, even if you are in the depths, there will come a day when you turn the tide against the wind and soar into the heavens. In the students' eyes, light flickered with adoration and longing. I stood at the doorway, listening quietly, the corners of my mouth involuntarily lifting into a slight smile. Suddenly, a familiar figure passed by beside me. She wore a simple teacher's uniform, her hair briefly tied at the back of her head, a pair of black-rimmed glasses covering most of her face. But I still recognized her at a glance. Sophia. She seemed to sense my gaze as well, and instinctively turned her head. Their eyes met. In her eyes flashed a hint of panic, a hint of helplessness, and also a deep inferiority. She instinctively wanted to dodge. Teacher Sophia. I, however, took the initiative and called out to her. Her body stiffened. She slowly turned around, not daring to meet my eyes. Johnson, Mr. Johnson. Her voice was as thin as a mosquito's. I looked at her. The woman before me no longer had the dazzling radiance of years past. Time had left clear marks on her face, and her eyes had grown dim. I heard that after the Brown family went bankrupt, she suffered greatly to help her father repay debts. Later, she earned a teaching certificate and returned to her alma mater to work as an ordinary counselor. Long time no see, I said calmly. Long time no see. She bowed her head even lower. A long silence fell between us. In the end, she was the one to break the silence. How have you been? She asked cautiously. What do you think? I replied. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with complicated emotions. There was regret, unwillingness, envy, and nothing of the old love remained. She forced a wry smile. Yeah, what about you? I asked again. I'm Fina. She smiled weakly. Simple and uneventful, it's pretty good. I knew she wasn't fine, but I didn't expose it. Some scars don't need to be reopened. I'm leaving. She seemed unwilling to stay with me another moment. She hurriedly said that and turned to go. Watching her slightly stooped back, an unprecedented calm settled in my heart. All the kindnesses, all the resentments, at this moment, seemed to dissipate like smoke along with her retreating figure. I suddenly understood. True letting go is neither forgetting nor forgiving. It is when she stands before you again, and your heart is already calm. In the end, I did not end up with anyone. I devoted my entire life to the cause of human technology. On my 200th birthday, I boarded Vision Tech's latest expedition, interstellar ship, left Earth, and headed into the depths of the universe to explore that unknown sea of stars. My legend was passed down on Earth for centuries. Some say I died. Some say I attained immortality and became a god in the universe. That, in short, is the legendary life of Mr. Ethan Johnson. In an antique study, a white-haired old man closed the book in his hands and said to the teenage boy opposite him. The boy listened raptly, eyes full of longing. Grandpa, was this Ethan Johnson really that formidable? The old man smiled, and a complex glint passed through his clouded eyes. He was 100 times more formidable than the books described. Then where did he end up? Did he really become a god? The young man asked curiously. The old man shook his head, stood up, walked to the window, and gazed out at the deep night sky. I don't know either, but I believe that he must, somewhere we cannot see, be continuing to create his own legend. The old man's gaze seemed to pierce time and space, seeing that lone boat sailing through the endless sea of stars. Grandpa, you seem to know him very well. The youth sharply sensed something. The old man turned his head, looked at his grandson, and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. He didn't answer. He simply gently patted the cover of that biography. On the cover was a line of guilt-embossed characters. I, Ethan Johnson, a maker of an era. Author, Liam Harris. After the Brown family's bankruptcy and Richard Brown's paralysis, Liam Harris once ended up on the streets, surviving by scavenging through trash. He hates me to the bone. He tried countless times to take revenge on me, but the gap between us had long been like an impassable chasm, leaving him not even qualified to come near me. In endless despair and pain, he chose another way to revenge on me. He began to study me. He gathered all the information about me, interviewed everyone who had dealt with me, trying to find my weaknesses and the method to defeat me from the trajectory of my life. But the deeper he studied, the more desperate he became. He discovered that my life was like a bug script without a single flaw. He went from initial resentment to unwillingness to doubt, and finally to worship. He was completely won over by my incredible rise and my business plans that were a century ahead. He became the person in this world who knew me best, even better than I knew myself. He began to write a biography about me. He wanted to record this legendary story and tell the whole world. This book consumed the efforts of his later years. On the day the book was finished, he also reached the end of his life. On his deathbed, he handed the manuscript to his son, who would later be the father of that old man, and left a final message. Our Harris family owes Mr. Johnson an apology. This book is my confession. From now on, the descendants of the Harris family should, generation after generation, take Mr. Johnson as an example and contribute their efforts to the progress of humankind. So, Grandpa, you are. The youth stared at his grandfather in shock. The old man smiled, tacitly confirming it. Remember, child, the old man said earnestly, never let hatred blind your eyes. Sometimes, when you truly understand your enemy, you'll find he may be your greatest teacher. The youth nodded, half understanding. He picked up the biography and opened it again. On the flyleaf was a line written in Liam Harris's own handwriting. To my only rival in life and my eternal idol, Ethan Johnson. Outside the window, the starlight glittered as if answering this century-spanning grudge. And in the distant depths of the universe, a silver spaceship was slowly sailing toward an unknown nebula. A new legend was only just beginning.